Tonight on Ranger Gareth Podcast Episode 6, birds, what are they? Where did they come from? Why do we care? How can you get them in your yard? And is Pandemic Bird Bingo the next game that's going to take the nation by storm? Find out on Episode 6. So, yep, I'm going to talk about birds today. Something that I love, something that I spend a lot of my time staring at. And I will turn off my phone because that was super professional. Okay, going to start that all over again. So for this episode, we're going to talk about some of the common birds you'll find in Alberta, what are some good bird watching spots, and some types of feeders you can use to attract birds to your yard. And if you go over to my blog, you will find the template for Pandemic Bird Bingo, which will hopefully give you something to do if you like staring out of your window into the void. So some of Alberta's most common birds, unfortunately, are invasive. The first one I'm going to talk about is the house sparrow. So yeah, it's an invasive bird. It's very sexually dimorphic, which means the male and female look very different. They're a bit bigger than chickadees, and they do quite well around human habitation. You can usually tell the male because of the dark brown cap, the black almost bib on it, and its female partner is just slightly smaller and mostly a tan to light brown kind of color. A big issue with house sparrows is that they're about the same size as so many other native Alberta birds. So they take over the nest boxes of a lot of other birds. So if you're looking to put a nest box up in your backyard, but you don't want the house sparrows to take over, make the entry hall quite small, like 1 1/8 of an inch. That'll exclude the house sparrows, but it will allow wrens and chickadees to come in. House sparrows are one of the most common birds you're going to find in Edmonton. So if you see someone say, or hear say, if someone says, I saw a sparrow, they're probably talking about a house sparrow just because they are everywhere. Black-capped chickadees are another very popular bird species. They are the most common chickadee that we have in the province. Some people are like, what? There's more than one chickadee? Yeah, we have like 4 types in Alberta. But the black-capped chickadee is the most common. They make that standard chickadee-dee-dee-dee call. They're adorable. They're very inquisitive. They are likely to eat out of your hand if you go to certain parts of the province where they're quite habituated. They have the black cap on top of their head with the gray backs and the white bellies. And fun fact, their brains actually grow quite a bit when it comes to like the fall / early winter because it allows them to remember where they stashed all their food. The third bird on the list of super common birds around here are house finches. Now, house finches look a lot like a house sparrow, similar body size. The females look almost identical, but the males have a bright red head. So if you think you see a house sparrow, but it's bright red, probably a house finch. Next, I'm going to go to the red-breasted nuthatch. These birds have small bodies, almost no neck. They have a blue-gray back and a black cap with some white stripes above their eyes. It looks kind of like cartoon angry eyebrows and a rusty red belly. The white-breasted nuthatch looks very similar size. They have blue-gray back, a white breast instead, and white face, like white cheeks, but a black stripe that runs down the middle of their head. Both types of nuthatches love stashing nuts for later, so you might see them coming to your feeder quite a bit, and next thing you know, your feeder's empty. It's probably because they're hiding some of that food for winter, and they'll hide it in crevices and trees or under the loose bark, just wherever they can. A couple honorable mentions. We have waxwings, which are kind of this peach orange kind of buff color with these black masks, and they are what's called an eruptive species, IRRUPTIVE, which means their population occasionally just explodes every few years, not on a regular pattern. The American robin, which most of you probably know, the common raven, which I can dedicate a whole episode to if you guys want, because they are one of the smartest birds ever. American crows, black-billed magpies, blue jays, northern flickers, which are a type of woodpecker, probably about the size of a crow, and sometimes if you get close enough, you'll see they'll either have a red or a yellow mustache. Downy woodpecker, which is the cutest, tiniest woodpecker. If you see a little bird that's black and white with a red patch on the back of its head and it is pecking something, most likely the downy woodpecker. Great horned owls, red-tailed hawks, mallards, which are the standard green-headed duck you might see, the ones that have the standard whack, whack, whack kind of sound, and the Canada goose. And if you don't know what a Canada goose looks like, you probably aren't from Canada, because we can't avoid them. If you guys are looking for a good bird list to find out what some of the most common birds are, check out the Edmonton Christmas bird count list, and that'll give you some of the most common winter bird species. My personal go-to guide when it comes to bird watching is Birds of Alberta by Chris Fisher and John Acorn. It just has some nice illustrations. It shows you the range of the birds and what kind of habitats you're most likely to encounter them in. There's a couple nice little facts about them. It's where a lot of people start their birding journeys. When it comes to some of the best bird watching spots, actually I'll get to that after. First, I'll just do the most popular feeders, because this is slightly less exciting. But when people go out and buy a finger quotes bird feeder, it's typically the tube style feeder where you have a little silo full of seed or nuts and a couple little entry points and perches for small birds to eat. That one is best for, well, obviously smaller birds, because they have very small entry portals for the birds to access the food, and the way the perches are located, a big bird can't be perched and get the seed at the same time. So this would be best for like different types of sparrows, chickadees, pine siskins, etc. Next, we've got the tray feeders, which are pretty much just a large serving platter that you fill with seed, and then bigger birds can get in there, like blue jays, larger woodpeckers. And then finally, we have the suet feeders. Now, suet is essentially a seed, fruit, nut mix that you kind of suspend in a hardened beef tallow or other kind of animal fat that is solid at room temperature. It's super calorically dense. A lot of perching birds can't access it just because of the way the suet feeders hang. But woodpeckers and nuthatches love suet feeders. Now getting on to the best bird watching spots. So I have been to all of them on this list, except for the first one I'm going to speak about, which is Cold Lake. Now, Cold Lake is way out in eastern Alberta, kind of right near the border with Saskatchewan. It's highly recommended by the Birds of Alberta guide I just mentioned by John Acorn and Chris Fisher. It's far from any major cities, so it's pretty remote, has a healthy bird population. You can camp right on the edge of the lake, which is nice, so you can see a mix of the water birds as well as a bunch of different types of warblers, which have some of the nicest songs you'll find in Canada. Next is Kinbrook Island Provincial Park. This one is about 15 kilometers from Brooks, Alberta, so kind of going to the southeast part of the province. There are some protected wetlands with a trail that goes right through them, and you're going to find a great variety of waterfowl like pelicans, ducks, different types of shorebirds, pheasants, yellow-headed blackbirds. It's fantastic. Bring sunscreen. I burnt so bad when I went. Then you get Cypress Hills, which is right down in the southeast corner of Alberta. It's an interprovincial park with Saskatchewan. The town of Elkwater is actually inside the park, which is nice if you're looking for a quick little resupply. It's beside a pond. It is a great place to look for wild turkeys. I haven't seen a wild turkey in Alberta yet, so I need to go back down and find it. But look out for cougars. I have a coworker that used to work down there, and they do a ton of research and cougar projects down in that part of the country. Next is Waterton National Park. It's in the very southwest corner of Alberta, and it's what's called an international peace park, with Waterton on the Canadian side and Glacier National Park on the American side. It's home to the popular Crypt Lake Trail. Some of you might have seen the YouTube video of this trail where you have to climb up an iron ladder and hang out on this metal cable and walk through this tunnel. Yeah, that's Crypt Lake. Expect to see Steller's jays, mountain chickadees, which I like to call angry eyebrow chickadees, and a ton of thrushes. So you'll get the varied thrush, the Swainson's thrush, the hermit thrush. Look up the hermit thrush and the Swainson's thrush call on YouTube. They have the most haunting song you'll ever hear. Finally is Elk Island National Park, the one I have the most experience with. There are over 250 bird species out there. There's a mix, there's such a good variety of habitat there. You have wetlands, you have open grasslands, you have aspen forests, you have some spruce forests. You're going to find chickadees, robins, ravens, all kinds of woodpeckers, grouse, herons, ducks, hawks, as well as the bison and the elk and all the other larger animals. Plus, they have the Boxing Day bird count. I forget if I mentioned that in an earlier episode, but if you're free December 26th, go down, get some food, and go count birds. Just going to throw in a couple honorable mentions. Lois Hole Centennial Provincial Park, just outside Edmonton in St. Albert. Clifford E. Lee Natural Area, just west of Edmonton. And the White Mud Ravine in Edmonton. If you hike the White Mud Ravine from the Alfred Savage Center around Fox Drive and White Mud Drive, and you can walk all the way down to Rainbow Valley, and you can keep walking even further south down to Westbrook Drive. It is fantastic. You're going to find, nuthatches, chickadees, pine siskins, grouse if you're lucky. It's right in Edmonton, which makes it super convenient. So that's my brief rundown on birds around Edmonton. Check out the blog for Pandemic Bird Bingo, and I will catch you all later. Intro and outro music provided by Brian J. Nelson. Check him out on SoundCloud.